Welcome everybody to episode 65 of Drum Education Live, and today we have the wonderful Christal Kuna with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We're going to open it with our usual question, which is, what do you think is missing from drum education today?
Yeah, so you actually did give me a bit of a heads up on this one, but it's still not an easy one to answer. I can't speak for drum education worldwide, but I think one thing that I find a little bit lacking on drum education in Singapore might be the actual application of the learning, like actually getting out and playing with other people, because it's so much easier to just teach drums to a student in the room next to you. But how are you going to get them to play with other musicians? And the other thing that came to mind was listening. That's another thing that's really hard to teach, but it's so important in music. And especially if the student doesn't play with other musicians, they might not really grasp how important listening is. And as a teacher, especially, I come from a kind of music school teaching background before I moved into private teaching. And for a majority of schools, it's just easier to standardize your curriculum based on notes and reading, because that's something that's very easy to give the student a piece of paper, a chart, and then they play the chart. But how do you actually teach them to listen to different parts in the song, and then to get them to relate that to drumming as a whole? So that's one aspect, I guess, in the whole holistic view of drum education that can sometimes be glossed over.
Well, I think it pretty much describes drumming education worldwide. You spoke for Singapore, but I think this is lacking all over the world. But one question: you in the school where you used to teach, did they have performances where the students could play, or it was only about the playing part, the exercise and stuff?
Yeah, they did try to give the students performances. The easier one is recitals, where they're kind of playing to a backing track, and they organize some concerts where we have musicians, but it's hard to organize on a regular basis. It's going to be once every few years. Not everyone has a chance to do it. And jamming in a band is something you have to do regularly to really get the full experience of how that is. Yeah, and that's something that's somehow falling out of fashion, and not being able to meet people in the COVID situation is not helping. So that's definitely a global issue at the moment.
Yeah, I have a student who's 18, and he told me the other day that playing a band is very old-fashioned. And I said, well, but you play drums. What do you think you're going to do with your drums, man?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. He doesn't play with anyone. He plays with backing tracks. Some he gets from the internet. Some he writes himself. But he doesn't have the experience of being in a room with a guitar player and a bass player, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But that's enough about me. Kira?
I guess I want to know a little bit about how you got started in drumming and who your teachers were and influences.
How I got started in drumming, I think I briefly mentioned to you in one chat we had. I started in concert band in what we call secondary school here, which is basically age 13 to 16. So what happened was they had this, they call it an open house, showcasing the different clubs you can join in school. And I saw the concert band playing, and I saw the drummer, and she looked cool. So I was like, Mom, I want to play that. And my mom was like, can't you play the flute or the clarinet or something nice and small and portable? And I was like, no, the drums look cool. So interesting story. I signed up for this crash course at my church. So I play for church now. It was like a 1 week or 5 days. I can't remember, just getting started. I tried out drums for that 5 days or something. And then I signed up for band, and I told them I had experience in drums and I would like to join percussion. I had 5 days of experience. So this was a fake it till you make it story. I do not condone lying, but I mean, I did have experience of 5 days. I remember.
You didn't lie.
I remember nervously asking the girl next to me in the audition, like, how have you played an actual drum set like a few times before? And then she's like, yeah, what's wrong with you? I'm like, oh, I tried it for about 5 minutes.
Wow.
But yeah, somehow I got in, and then they threw me a score for band, and I was just completely lost and just gradually figured out how to read notes. And that's basically how I learned in percussion and how I ended up playing more drum set. So there's 4 years, right? So there's kind of like the junior years and the senior years. And a lot of my seniors didn't show up for the band practice. Like they would just skip the activity. So we would have, say, a bass drum, snare drum, and crash cymbal parts for those marching type songs. And since the actual players weren't around, like my part was the suspended cymbal or the tambourine or something. But because they weren't there, I sat at the drum set and I was like, I'm putting up the crash cymbal score, the snare score, and the bass drum score. I'm just going to play all of them. And that's how I developed drum set independence and reading.
Cool.
Wow. It's really different. I love that.
Yeah. And talk about crash course.
Yeah. Ba-bum. Like, you know.
It wasn't supposed to be a joke, Kira.
No, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm off
be.
today.
You're forgiven. It's all right.
Thank you.
But
Thanks.
did you have any formal drum lessons?
I did not have any formal drum lessons. Yeah.
I do not believe this. No.
Yeah.
You've never had any drum lessons?
I can't say never. I actually took about 3 drum lessons from some guy when I was on exchange in Oregon in US, and I wanted to ask the drum teacher of that university for lessons, and he's like, no, I'm too busy. You can have lessons with my student. So I contacted his student, and then his student, I think it was only like 2 or 3 lessons, and then he just ghosted me and he never replied. So
Oh my word.
That's about all my experience with formal drum lessons. Yeah. So after concert band, I auditioned for my church worship team in my youth group. And then I started playing when I was 17 in the church context. Then when I got to university, I joined a kind of rock band society. And then that's where I started actually gigging and meeting more musicians, playing different genres of music besides just concert band and percussion.
Wow, I'm shocked. I'm so shocked because the way you play and your technique and everything. I don't know. Maybe I'm being not very nice to people who haven't had formal lessons, but I just think, you know, you've got such a nice technique to your playing, and that I feel like that's quite uncommon. If you've never had an instructor, you know, back me up, Felipe.
Well,
come on.
You want me to dig you out of the hole? Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I first of all, I really envy these kind of people who can play as well as she does and never had any lessons. I cannot do that. I'm still. I started playing drums in the '80s. I'm still having lessons, and I'm still not nearly as good as I think I should be. So. First of all, I hate you.
No.
Well, that's that. I'm just gonna close the window now.
the shortest podcast ever. Okay, so the other thing is, if I think it's not impossible because all the techniques we played today, and we dumb people who need formal lessons. We learned today. Somewhere in the past they didn't exist, and if you have a very good spatial intelligence and also body awareness, you're gonna instinctively try to make things easier for you, because there's nothing worse than playing and having injuries and pain and being tired and everything. So this is amazing. This is really, really amazing. I know there are very few people in the world who can say, yeah, I've never had a formal drum lesson, and we are in the presence of one right here.
Yeah.
I only know 2 people who can say that. Besides her, only 2 people who can say that, and that speaks volume.
Wow.
There you go.
Dennis Chambers and
Wow.
Billy Coburn are the only 2 I know who had never had formal lessons.
If I can be at 1/10 of their level, I'll be quite pleased. But I think as far as technique goes, where I learned, I looked at a lot of drum books actually. So this was so around, I'm gonna age myself as well, but around 2004, 2005, around that period. I think that was when I started getting serious about drums, and I started watching a lot of videos. And then that was when YouTube just started. It was the time when you could watch all the drum videos on YouTube. So I would watch drummers and I'll just look at which seemed more relaxed and natural. And then I would stare at their hands like a mad person and try and figure out what it was that they were doing that I wasn't doing. And I think fast forward about maybe 5-6 years after that was when I really started looking into my technique, and that was the drum book phase, and also looking on like forums. Back then forums were more of a big thing than they are now, and that was kind of a main source for information. So I wouldn't participate because I was like, who am I? I'm just some kid, right? But I would be just reading through and trying to digest 20 different viewpoints, and after a while you see which viewpoints overlap, and then I kind of cross-reference that with the drum books. I cross-reference that with my observations, and also just like what Philippe said, kind of like the natural movement of wanting to play in a relaxed way and not hurting yourself. And then just going through all that and seeing where things kind of lined up, because there was so much information, not as much as there is now, which is a whole other discussion, but there was already quite a lot. But it's possible to kind of see where that intersects. And then it's very gratifying when you see something make sense and someone explain it in a way that you're like, wow, I actually came to figure this out after looking at this number of books, reading about this number of things, and practicing for this many hours. And someone else is summarizing it in this way that makes sense to them. And when that makes sense with my experience, I was like, okay, so this is probably somewhere on the right track. Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome.
That shows a lot of intelligence.
Yeah. I was going to wear my Dream Theater hoodie and I forgot because I think we share quite a few similar influences, and I wondered what came first, getting into that kind of bands, or did drumming lead you to like Dream Theater, or was it the other way around?
This is a very interesting thing because actually drawing led me to Dream Theater.
Oh, so yes.
Yeah, so I did not intend to pursue music as a full-time thing. It was just a hobby for all those years. I was very much torn between music and art as to which I should pursue. So there was a time in my early 20s where I was drawing a lot. I would do graphic illustration, kind of concept art, a lot of digital painting. So those kind of things, it's like one piece takes minimum 8 hours to like 20, 50 hours of work. So it's kind of like drawing through the night. I would just draw until the sun rises kind of thing in uni days. And when I was doing that, I would be listening to music. And if I listen to top hits and pop songs, one song is 3 minutes. And then I'm like, I'm drawing an eye. I've shaded half the eye and 20 songs have gone by. It makes the time feel like it's just gone. So then I started looking for longer form songs. And that's when I discovered like Rush and Dream Theater, because one song is now at least 6-7 minutes, 10 minutes, 12, 15 minutes. And I feel a bit better about myself. Like an hour passed, it was only 4 songs. And the storytelling aspect was something that I enjoyed as well a lot.
Cool. That is awesome. I did not expect that.
I get more surprised by the second with this podcast today, because it's like, I'll just shut up. I have nothing to say.
Oh, Christal's art is insane. Just I don't know if you posted any on your grid, but you don't do on your stories, don't you?
Very rarely. I hardly draw nowadays. It's kind of a forgotten hobby, but yeah, back then I did.
It's amazing.
Cool.
Okay, so YouTube, you've got a really strong following on there, and it's great. I had a look on your channel today, and you've just got some really brilliant videos. You've got some coverage, you've got some education, and I guess, how do you keep your ideas so fresh?
Oh, good question. Are they? I hope so. I was just talking to a YouTube friend I have. I think it was just yesterday, actually. I'm losing track of time these days. He was telling me like, oh, I have my next 2 months planned out. I'm like, wow, I'm so proud of you, my friend. I have no idea what next week will bring. So for me, the channel started out, I didn't intend to build a following. I never intended to be a content creator. I'm sure you might empathize in some ways. We were once drummers and now look what's happened. But I used to keep it just as an archive of my own playing, to challenge myself to play something and learn a song properly, because otherwise we just jam a song and it's like, yeah, I roughly got the parts down. And then, so the YouTube channel was a nice place to store those cover videos and have somewhere to put some kind of a showcase, more for myself than anything. And then over time, then I realized that, okay, maybe some people are actually interested in seeing this stuff. And then I started posting some with notation on them, especially for the church drumming community. So you might see some of those with the song transcriptions below. So that's one passion of mine, is to hopefully inspire some of the drummers who do play by ear to learn how to read, and also inspire those drummers who know how to read to think more about what they're playing. So that's the main intersection I'm trying to address with the videos I create. Whether I do so successfully or not, I will leave in the judgment of the kind viewer. But that's what I'm trying to do. And then as for the other ideas, honestly, a lot of the ideas come from my private teaching. It's questions that I get asked from my private students, or even ex-students, or just drummers on Instagram that message me and they just ask different questions. And then I'm like, oh, so there are people who are interested in this. And then I try and think if I can make sense of it and make a video out of it. And then occasionally when the inspiration strikes, I do.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple more questions about YouTube. Once you decide what you're going to post, how long do you spend doing it?
Oh God, that's a bad question. Way longer than I probably ought to, given the returns, which is, it's hardly coffee money. A long time, depending on the video. So I actually, okay, so there's a couple types of content, I guess, that I do. I don't do as much covers as I used to, because that was when the channel was more me focused. Now it's a bit more others focused, but if there's still a song that I'm interested in, I might do a cover. So that's one. Then there's the transcription covers, which have notation and then some notes about the song. And then there's the teaching kind of covers, which is like the most recent one. I did the 3/4 time and 6/8 time video. Yeah. So I think those are the broad categories. Everything else, okay, there might be gig videos if I do like a drum cam thing. So I would say the gig videos are the easiest, because I just played the gig and then it's just footage. I'm not really doing much for that. At most, I would do some commentary. So that's the easiest. If it's a cover, depends on the difficulty of the song. Like if it's a Dream Theater song and I need to memorize all 11 minutes of it and actually nail the patterns, that's going to take maybe even some months to practice, and then maybe in depth a few weeks to really drill, get it down. Editing for covers is actually easier if I can nail it in 1 or 2 takes. It's at most just like cutting here and there. Usually I try to do it in maybe 2 or 3 takes, like proper takes top, that I didn't mess up. And then the editing is quite easy in that sense, maybe just an hour or 2. And then audio, I'm not that good with processing audio. If any of my sound engineer friends ever watch this, they sometimes send me comments like, your drum mix could be better. So I don't necessarily spend a lot of time on that. Just as long as it's kind of representative, I'm okay with it. So that's like the second level. If it's a notation cover, writing the score out is going to take another hour or 2, depending on the complexity. And then when I edit the video, then I need to put in the images and I need to animate the cursor and I need to do all the text and all the labels. So that is like a full day of editing, probably. Usually I do it over 2 days, sometimes 3, depending on how long the thing is. So that's a good lot of hours into those. And also it doesn't help that the files get pretty big with all the different like layers and things. So it's a bit laggy on the computer, and then that slows down the whole process. Felipe is nodding. I'm sure you empathize with this video editing
I
issue.
empathize, and I'm thinking, welcome to drumming in the 21st century.
Oh yeah. So that's the next level of how many hours it takes. I'm actually working on one that I will hopefully release tomorrow. Though tomorrow on this podcast will depend when you're releasing this to the general public. So I was editing that pretty much half of today and a good chunk of yesterday. That's about how long it takes. Then for the teaching videos, those are the most difficult because I kind of need to brainstorm it first, make sure my ideas make sense, and kind of do a bit of research, make sure it's actually hopefully useful to someone, hasn't been done before in the exact same way I'm trying to do it. Then write out my ideas. Sometimes I will save the ideas in a document and let it just sit for a couple months, and then I'll come back and I'll think, okay, am I ready to do this yet? And then I usually have a few days of intense self-doubt about whether I am good enough to do it at all, because I'm really insecure about my video teaching skills. So that 3, 4, and 6/8 video, it has been sitting in the document since maybe Q1 or 2 this year, because I just felt I wasn't good enough to do it. And then
Oh
for the
my
whole
God,
week,
Christal.
the whole week before filming it, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. And I was like, oh, this is going to suck. Do I have to? And just like beating myself up about it and like, oh no, it's going to be horrible. It's going to make no sense. And then eventually I just was like, okay, shut up. You are just going to do this. And then I took another day to wait. I can't even remember. It was 1 or 2 days. I might have redone some parts. But yeah, sometimes I get so frustrated with myself, I just can it and I come back the next day. So it can be 1 or 2 days of the filming part and another day for editing. And because I can't talk coherently in front of a camera, I end up having to edit my talking a lot. Just I'll say the same thing and I'll be like, no, I just lost my train of thought. And then I repeat that thing. And then a 1-minute segment ends up 15 minutes. And then that's 15 minutes of editing I have to listen through to find the correct 1 minute. Yeah. So that's the worst.
No,
I
I
will
think you're way
never,
too hard
ever-
on yourself. You're amazing. Like, and I love your videos, and I think you're really great speaking to camera. I just think you've got a really good voice. Everything you say makes sense. It's all there. It's just,
Part of the everything I say makes sense is after the several hours of editing. If
I don't know. I don't know.
What matters is the end result.
Yeah, exactly. Like I do know that I have some ideas in there somewhere. It's just that it takes a while for them to get out. Like I don't know where exactly in that 20-minute stretch of rambling there are.
No, you do great. You do a great job. No one would know. The last question I wanted to ask about, like YouTube and also Instagram, is do you ever feel pressure to post?
I do actually, but then I remind myself that the pressure is just for myself. And so I think last week I was just really busy with other things and I didn't upload a YouTube video. So for the past couple months, usually I've been posting once a week, if not a full video, then a short, which the shorts will just be a less than 1-minute clip. And I usually just reuse Instagram clips because my YouTube audience is different from Instagram anyway, mostly anyway. For Instagram, it's a little more loose and it's a bit easier because the clips are so short and I don't put pressure on myself to have really high quality clips on Instagram. I feel like the higher you set the bar for yourself, the easier it is to feel pressured. So I kind of deliberately made Instagram the more chill section of content creation, and I try not to overthink it. And it's okay if it's just a phone camera thing once in a while. And that one, I try to have a buffer of a couple clips, and then just depending on my mood, I'll just put one or I won't. So as long as it's a few times a week, I don't feel as pressured by Instagram as YouTube because actually I find YouTube audiences a little more judgmental sometimes than Instagram. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think because YouTube, we tend to post longer videos, so they have more time to make comments. And Instagram, for example, I never put anything that's longer than 1 minute. So the moment they watch it, it's gone, and they're already up to something else. So I would like to ask you about the teaching aspect, because as you revealed to us, you had never had a formal lesson. How did you start on teaching then? How was this thing of, okay, I've never had a lesson and now I'm teaching? Did the teaching start, and how did you feel about it?
How I felt about it was easy. I was petrified and a lot of imposter syndrome, which is not entirely unjustified because I was like, I've never had a lesson. why am I giving someone a lesson? I don't know what I'm doing. That was like the first few years. How I got into it was actually just needing to earn some pocket money. So I started teaching part-time in university. I knew a friend in the university concert band who was also teaching in this drum school. And I auditioned, and by some miracle, I got accepted as a part-time drum teacher. And it was rough, especially teaching. I was 19, 20, 20. Yeah, I was 20 when I started. And then I was teaching some classes. Like, I had a group class, I remember, of 3 boys who were 17, 18-ish. So the age gap was really close, and it was so difficult to control them. Or especially being a female, a young female, teaching guys who think that drummers are generally male, which they are. And they're like, why am I learning from this young girl who's like just starting out? So there was a lot of inadequacy there. But I think in terms of being a teacher, I actually had practice in concert band before, because it's kind of grouped in sections, and I was like a section leader. So you're sort of used to mentoring the juniors who are coming up and teaching them the basics and things like that. And it also helped that I was in a music school. I wasn't starting out private teaching on my own. And this music school had a really good structure. They had syllabus and materials that you could kind of take the student through. So you're not just tossed in the deep end. There's actually like chapters, beginner student, intermediate student, and they would conduct training sessions. And also it was a community of drummers and drum teachers who were going through the system together. So I learned a lot from fellow drum teachers as well, who were in that particular school. So I'm very glad that I joined that school, which is a specialized drum school. So it was only drums, only drum teachers. And that's how I actually met and interacted with other drummers, I think pretty much for the first time. Like, there were other drummers in church, but you don't really meet them, because when you play in a band, you're the only drummer. You don't always go out and chat with other drummers besides more than a few comments. So that was how I learned, working with other drummers and drum teachers. And then after work, staying back to jam with them, realizing how you even jam with other drummers, and sharing ideas. That was the beginnings of meeting the drum community.
Cool.
Nice.
Kira?
With that in mind, I see you went to a Mike's Lessons camp. What was the what did you want to gain from that experience, and do you think you did?
Honestly, what I really wanted to gain from that experience is a break from work. At that point. So I can say 100%.
Best
This is a
answer
trailer.
ever.
It's true though. And also that was literally, I think, like 1 or 2 months before I was gonna get married. So it was like a bachelorette party for myself with a bunch of drummers.
God, I love
was great.
it.
Yeah.
You wish you
It
could
was-
turn
it
back
was
time
really
now, Kira, right? Have a completely different bachelorette party.
No, mine was good.
Oh, okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so it was at that point I had just been teaching nonstop for quite a number of years, and it was a great experience to kind of take lessons in a way, or at least be mentored, and learning together with other drummers in a different environment rather than the same one I'd been in for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years by that time teaching. Yeah, so it was a change of pace and change of perspective. And it was also really just very nice to meet Mike, because he was one of the first YouTubers I watched back in that 2005 era when YouTube was coming up, and he had the over-the-shoulder camera when he was teaching. I don't know if you guys saw that. Like
I
when
think
he was
so.
a kiddo, and then he would sit at the kid and there's a camera just going over his shoulder, and he would smile up at it this way. I don't know if those are still up there. It's like the really early ones.
I don't think they are.
Love it.
And what did you take besides the break? What did you take out of this camp with Mike?
I guess there was a lot of allowing the student to practice. So he was basically teaching us, bringing us through his day, I think, in terms of a practice routine. So there were times where he wasn't so much just giving concepts and throwing out concepts, because that's the easier thing to do when you're teaching. but there was also just like, okay, I'm going to give you this time and this concept to practice, and we're just going to compare your start and end points and have you progressed. So that was a deliberate thing. And I was like, okay, that's something I can implement in my teaching, maybe not always during the class time, but at least to get the student to go home and practice and be like, okay, can you record yourself practicing this and show me your progress the next time on this thing? Just to, or even to do it for a short time in class to model for them how you practice, because sometimes we just assume the student practices on their own, but you actually need to sit down with them and be like, okay, you got to do this thing, and then let's see if it improved by the end of this period. The other interesting thing he did was to show us a couple different genres and ask us what was it? Which of the drummers that he showed would we want to be? Like, so not so much the music you necessarily just enjoy listening to, but what would you want to play ultimately? And just to get an idea of someone's musical tastes and sensibilities. And that was a good reminder to not just teach students for the sake of teaching them, but figure out what makes them tick, what kind of music that they might aspire to play, and to give them examples of this. So as teachers, like, sometimes it's easy to just be like, okay, free stroke, you got to do this, rebound, molar, this is how you should be moving. Those are the easy things to do. But sometimes it's like, okay, I got to step back and just do some research. Can I find some interesting bands? Give the student just a few 30-second clips and let them listen to that. Because again, going back to what we started off with on listening, sometimes students in this day and age, I mean, listening to music is also falling out of fashion a little bit. We don't really deliberately, you don't buy a record anymore because all the music is there, but why should you pick something and listen to it? So just exposing them to the fact that different genres exist is something that is part of a lesson. And a lesson is not just paradiddle, rudiment, this song, learn this beat. Yeah, it's also exposing them to some listening and seeing what their preferences are. That's also part of music education.
Cool.
100%. I wanted to know about any current bands that you're in and where you're at with that.
My bands currently are not super active, also partly because of the COVID situation. So at the moment, we can't go out besides in groups of 2. So that's not working very well for jamming.
Oh, so that's how it is until when? Do you know?
Hopefully until mid-August. And then that's when they'll reevaluate the restrictions. But before that, it was up to 5 before things kind of got a little bit worse over here. So my main band is Sangriento. It's a symphonic metal band. And we were halfway writing our second album, but then this whole COVID thing happened and we're sort of taking a bit of a break from that, but hopefully we'll get it done probably by next year. Yeah, cool. So that is the main band I'm drumming for. I'm also helping out with my husband's band. If you've seen some clips where I'm on bass, that one's a temporary thing because they just needed a bass player to fill in, and it's been fun playing a secondary instrument in a kind of straight up rock band.
That's impressive, yeah. Just like,
and again, you didn't have any bass lessons, right?
Yeah.
No. Okay, the only
why did I ask? Why did I ask?
The only instrument I've had lessons in was piano, and I thank my mother for that. And I hated it at the time. I was from age 7 to 12 taking piano lessons, and then by 13 I got so fed up. I was like, Mom, I'm done, quitting piano. But in hindsight, I would not have been able to fake my way through band without the piano background and knowing music theory, and all of that has been so useful in helping me get to where I am today. So thanks, Mom.
Do you write songs as well?
I don't actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, finally something that she doesn't do. Got it.
I'm just not good enough at any melodic instrument, I think, to write songs. But I'm happy to write drum parts for other people's songs. That's always fun.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, because probably if the piano, the years you spent on piano would really help you to write songs, because you have, I bet you have a lot of ideas in your head that you should try to develop them. But that's just my personal note. We're gonna cut that out.
Do you practice much? I get the feeling like you're practicing
If she
for.
says she doesn't practice, I'm out of here. She
No.
never had a lesson. She plays bass, and now she says, "Nah, I don't practice. Bye, I'm off."
No, don't. No, I'm asking because I feel like we're producing. We, as you know, people who are on Instagram and whatever, make content. So obviously, you kind of have to practice for that and prepare for that. And I know from my point of view, I'm like, I definitely need to practice more, but you know, there's no time or whatever. How about you? Is practicing something that you do religiously every day, or is it more of a case of I'm just practicing what I need to?
At the moment, it's kind of the latter. Like it was better some time back, maybe a month ago, but yeah, a couple of projects piled up, and so like today, I was telling Felipe earlier before you came in that I literally just had to drag myself away from the computer and whack the drums for 10 minutes because I'd forgotten what my life was about. I spent the morning recording a vocalist who's doing some singing for a set, and then that was like the entire morning. And then I had a lesson in the afternoon, and I was editing the audio, editing videos, trying to get tomorrow's YouTube video together. And then I was like, great, it's going to be dinner time. I haven't touched a pair of sticks besides teaching my student. So practice doesn't happen as much as I would like it to. Like Felipe said, I think we always know that, wow, I could be so much better. But there also comes a point, I guess, where it depends on where you find your fulfillment as a drummer. Like at the moment, creating content and inspiring people or teaching my private students, even if it's at the expense of my chops to an extent, I still find it more fulfilling in the long run, if that makes sense. So obviously we don't want to regress or get worse. We still want to improve, but putting in that 8 hours a day is not happening right now. If it's half an hour, I am a happy woman. So yeah, at this point, it depends on what projects there are. If there's not so many, like if it's just my own personal projects, I'm not dealing with other people's deadlines, then I can afford to put in a bit more time practicing. And most of the Instagram clips I post, I don't really plan like I am doing this to put on Instagram, besides maybe the sticking challenges. That's a bit planned. But for most of the other stuff, it's literally just what I happen to be practicing. And I just share a clip of that. Yeah, when I was having to work on the bass for that other band that they just had a gig a couple weeks back, I had like very little time to practice drums because I was trying not to look like an idiot on the bass. So that was a daily like hour or two or so, you know, getting familiar with the instrument. So yeah, it really depends on what's going on at the moment. But I try to get a little bit of at least hand maintenance in. Tommy Igo's lifetime warm up has been a very useful thing for that, because you can just be like, okay, this is 10 minutes. I'm just going to set aside 10 minutes and run through this routine.
Nice.
Brilliant.
And one thing I've learned from Billy Coben in an interview he did years ago is after a while, when you know we're being professional drummers for some time now, it's practice with a purpose is more effective than just general practicing. When you're up and coming, when you're a student, and when not only you have the time, but you can afford to, you know, just practice anything for, like as you said before, 8 hours a day. But then once you start getting busy, not only with the profession of being a musician, but with everything else that happens, because you know we need to face we're adults now, and we have to run our own lives, not only our drumming. So it's more effective if you have a purpose. You know, if you're going to practice. Okay, maybe you think I have a technique deficiency in some sort of exercise. Then, okay, I'm going to focus on that. And then even if you practice just like for 20 minutes a day, you're going to take a lot more out of it than just, you know, bashing around drums. That's my excuse anyway.
Well, it's definitely important to have something you're working towards, I think, in any case. So, I mean, even for someone beginning, it helps to at least have one focus. So then you can see the progress in that area rather than just doing 100 things and you don't even know if you're getting any better at them. So that's
True.
definitely some wisdom there.
What would you say to your younger self?
I would say stop thinking other people care about how good or how bad you are. There were a lot of times I could have played the drums, but I didn't just because I thought people would think badly of me for some reason. Or if I knew there was another drummer around who would be listening, I just would not want to play the drums because I just felt so insecure about my playing. And that's something that carried with me probably till my 20s. Like I'm only really now trying to get out of that. So this is something I think Mike picked up when I went for the camp as well, because I only played covers for the most part. I didn't really know how to express myself and just explore playing on the drums, because if I was quoting someone else's part, then I can do it correctly. If I'm just vomiting on the drums, I don't know what I'm doing. and like I just have no confidence in being able to say anything of worth. And I think that stemmed from just feeling very, I don't know why, I felt very insecure as a kid. And like in one of the junior college, so this is when I'm 17, 18, in that band, I knew that there was another drummer who played a different instrument, and I just would not dare to touch the drum set anytime he was around, unless it was an actual band piece. I wouldn't just sit down and just jam. So, and also not having a drum set at home didn't help that. So every time I played drums, it would be in a public space, like in the school band setting or something, or in church. There are always other people around, and then I just feel like I am very inadequate. So I would tell myself, stop feeling so inadequate and just have fun.
Great advice. Oh no, I relate to a lot of what you're saying. You know, it's tough sometimes to get rid of the crap that's in your head.
Yeah.
And yeah, I relate. I've done that a lot too, just like not played because I'm like, I don't want them to, I don't want to fuck up. And especially if they're a drummer, I'd be like, or if I'd be playing a gig and someone would say, hey, this person's in the audience and they're a drummer, I'd be like, why did you tell me that?
Yes, I totally know the feeling. Yeah.
I'd rather not know.
Then the thing is, when we actually watch other drummers, I mean, most of the time, we're not even judging them harshly. We're just like, cool, you play. And even if you notice something like their technique is off, it's nothing to do with them as a person. It's just an observation. And most of the time, we're just like, yeah, you're making music and that's great. We're not really thinking anything negative about the person, but we just assume that they will think that about us.
Yeah, how funny is that? And you're right, it's like you're rooting for the person. You want it to, especially at a gig, you're just like, yeah, come on, we're all in it together. But I don't know, yeah, the mind could be a funny thing, I think. So I would definitely say something similar.
All those times, just ignoring the drum sitting there because I didn't want people to hear me. But it doesn't help that it's such a loud instrument. I would just feel really shy. Like I never got the aggressive kind of thing or guys that could play aggressively, because I would just feel so bad for noise polluting if I were to play anything at that level.
Yeah, so true. Then I just want to say thank you so much for your time and thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing all that you do on Instagram and YouTube. I know it's really helpful for a lot of people, so keep doing what you're doing, and thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys have had some really amazing drummers on your podcast interview series, and I was like, why am I here? But I'm honored.
Because you're one of them. You are one of the amazing drummers.
Yes, and someone requested you too.
Oh.
The fan club.
Is it you? No.
No, I would. I'd be like, yes. It was me and someone else requested.
Well, thank you. Thank you, mystery person. That's so cool.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
All right, thank you. So nice to talk to you guys.